Next up, we have Ujjwal Toda, MuleSoft mentor and enterprise architect from Reckitt. He's going to share with you Reckitt's connected ecosystems with MuleSoft. Ujjwal, take it away.
Hi, my name is Ujjwal Toda, and I am the enterprise architect for integrations at Reckitt. As an enterprise architect, I head the integration strategy. With that, let's see what we want to discuss today. Let's understand about where is Reckitt, who is Reckitt, what is Reckitt. We are 42,000 plus strong employee organization. We have a rich heritage of brands that go back almost 200 plus year old heritage. Most of the Reckitt brands that we know today are because of Reckitt and Benkiso, which were two different organizations back then, and they joined hands, and that's how the story goes with other acquisitions and so on and so forth. But who is Reckitt? Well, look behind the bottle, the label of Dettol, and you'll find that manufactured by RB or Reckitt. RB was our previous name, and today we have, as early as April itself, early April, we moved from RB, Reckitt Benkiso, to Reckitt. So we are RB as now this is Reckitt. Reckitt is now what you would have known yesterday as RB. Where we are? Well, we are across 60 countries. We have 9 Center of Excellences, and Reckitt is spread across multiple markets through its suppliers and distributors. Majorly, our products are Dettol, Lysol, and in the times of COVID, these were the products that were used by frontline workers, hospitals, and so on and so forth. Reckitt has been doing its share of contributing. Apart from this, let's understand what is Reckitt's vision and mission and goal as such. Reckitt wants to create an impact in the society. We are primarily an organization that want to make sure that our products, which are related to health, hygiene, and nutrition, are available to all, and just not the privileged stuff. So it's all a right and not a privilege. That's what Reckitt is all about. How do we want to achieve it? Well, it's just not in very simple strategy on selling more goods or covering more markets. It is about making sure that we come up with some kind of an institute which we have to make sure that the world is healthier by understanding what are the basic principles of health. It's also about trying to make sure that our supply chain is efficient, our cost of goods are coming down, our reach to consumers are better, to make sure that our products are reaching them, making sure that they have a chance for health, hygiene, and nutrition, and not just the privileged few. That's the mission and that's the goal. But before we get in, let's think about where is Reckitt and where is the industry trend. And way back when integration started, or when we used to have applications, we used to have point-to-point integrations. That's because most of our integrations are application-based integrations. Back in 1980s and 1990s, people evolved into the so-called service-based integration or enterprise application integrations. What do we mean by service-based integrations? Well, that is your SOA architecture-based integrations, which is service-oriented architecture. As such, integrations are not new. Integrations always existed in some way or in some form inside the applications, outside the applications, and they were built using service-oriented architecture. So what are APIs, or what is all this API-led architecture? I mean, these are common words in integrations that keep ringing in our ears whenever we walk into any kind of presentation or whenever we walk into any kind of product demos, etc. API stands for Application Programming Interface. When was the name API coined? All the way back in probably 1960s or 1970s, when the first computers and first hardware computers started coming up in the market, and where you needed computers to talk to something else, to a keyboard, to a particular mouse or particular printer. That's where you have application programming interface itself. Yes, they were not so easy. They did follow the service-oriented architecture. What happened from then to now? The world moved from application-based integration to self-service-based integrations. Now, what do we mean by self-service-based integrations? We expect people to walk into an organization, understand that, you know what, these are the rules, these are the regulations, these are the standards to build an integration. They should not feel an hindrance to adopt any kind of standards. That means integrations are federated and democratized in organizations. How do you do that? Is it possible? Well, as I said, it is possible and the industry trend is there. Let's not talk about self-service. I mean, the future, the way I see it, is transitioning from self-service integration to a self-defining integration and transitioning from self-defining to self-healing. Now, if you are able to create an ecosystem where you are able to provide a self-service based integration, it's quite logical to be able to provide self-defining integrations. And if you are able to do self-defining integrations, it's quite possible to do self-healing. So theoretically, it's possible. Practically, it has been proven. Why are we not seeing it across the world? Why are we not seeing self-defining and self-healing? If you take a step back and look at this particular slide, you will realize that this is just not integration strategy. This is a strategy for data, for any kind of technology, any kind of computer systems. It is the way computer systems are going to get evolved. You just can't avoid it. How do we stay ahead of the curve? That's important. How are we making ourselves ready for this kind of evolution? That's important. Not trying to run behind these things, but to make sure that we are ready for these things. And that's where you have your so-called API-led architectures and service mesh coming. This is where Reckitt is. And surprisingly, this is just not Reckitt's problem. This is problem of every large enterprise. If we do not do the right interventions across industries, forget about Reckitt, and I'm just saying across industries, we will never be able to meet the digital ambitions of this world. Forget about Reckitt again. If Reckitt wants to make much more healthier world, much more less privileged world, and not just its products, anything and everything is a right and should be a right. We pay our taxes. It's just not going to be Reckitt's journey. It's going to be everything connected with Reckitt, every industry connected with Reckitt. So moving on, let's see what the organizations lack. I've categorized it into 3 areas: well-established, in progress, and missing. Now this is pertaining to integrations again. Business alignment. Well, we have funding, we have sponsorship. Where are we getting it from? We're getting it from business. Business is funding us to do something from an application, whether it's application modernization, whether it's integration modernization. All of these things are because somebody is sponsoring it. And that is why business alignment is always there. We never have to worry about it because no business in this world runs without applications, runs without integrations. Let's talk about API lifecycle management. Well, do we have it? Yes and no. Why? Because we have different set of integrations catering to different application integrations, different data integrations. So we have a mixed breed of things. Do we have a centralized API lifecycle management? Can we have it? Well, it depends upon how much of legacy you have. Let's talk about developer enablement. We spoke about business alignment. We spoke about API lifecycle management. What do we mean by developer enablement? It's about federating integrations. It is about democratizing integrations. In short, it is about self-service integrations. How do we do self-service integrations? Well, have the standards, have the guardrails, create a standardized environment, let anyone or everyone walk in, build integrations, and the organizations should not suffer because how the integrations are built, because they would have enough control mechanisms, enough control systems to ensure that integrations are built in a standardized manner. Enabling development or developers to develop in a standardized manner across the breadth and depth of integrations is definitely a challenge. And why it's a challenge? Well, I think most of you would already know. People just want to meet the timelines. Probably an organization has missing standards. Probably an organization has standards defined, but they are extremely theoretical and are not practical. That is the reason why developer enablement is missing. But that has not stopped us from building integrations. What has it cost? Are we measuring business value? How are we measuring our KPIs? Majority of technology or technology-centric projects and technology-centric applications and technology-centric ecosystems, they measure business value or their KPIs are all on schedule variances, effort variances, how much time it's going to take us to deliver something in a given time, how efficiently we are delivering something, what's the planned time versus what's the actual time, what's the planned effort to what is the actual effort. But who's measuring the business value as such? When, let's say, we do this integration, how much of new orders are coming through? What is the order volume? How are we able to make sure that because of this integration, our logistics are faster, that we can deliver a kind of a shipment of Dettol from one area of the globe to the other area of the globe? That is what we should measure. And I doubt it if anybody is measuring that at an API level, that this API actually causes this kind of KPI benefits. The next thing, which is very important for connected ecosystems, is the community of practice. And we're not talking about an internal organization's community of practice or an internal setup where you have you have the MuleSoft team, you have the SAP team, you have the Azure team, or you have the so-called big data team, and so on and so forth. Everybody creating their so-called technology-centric teams and still connected to a community of practice. No, that's just the internal community of practice. What I mean by community practices is to connect with organizations, with the teams outside the organization. So Reckitt's team should be connected to something like the other industry available integrations, and probably in forums like these, not just in forums like this, but it should be all automatic. We have been always connected in Connect or other places. Imagine our integrations connected across the world in a secured manner for a particular community business process, community, improvised societies. Now that will definitely cause an impact. It's not about consumer sentimental analytics. It is about social health analytics. It is about connecting various organizations in the supply chain to ensure that, again, going back to Reckitt's aim and goal, to make sure health, nutrition, hygiene is a right and not a privilege. That's what is required. Now let's move on and understand what's the buzz all about, to be honest. Integration as a service, that's what a lot of people sell today. It's now integration platform as a service. That's because that's what cloud is all about. Why do we need an integration platform as a service? That is very important. The end goal is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a connected ecosystem. So why do we need a connected ecosystem? We by now would have understood it's because of sustainability. It's because of making sure that the society is more sustainable, more connected. We need to make sure that our business processes are composable. Internal business processes, external business processes, and industry-specific business process. If we want it composable, we need to have a service mesh or the right API and right microservices strategy. And to have a proper service mesh, you need an integration platform as a service. Now, this is irrespective of what kind of middleware you might need underneath the hood. You might have SAP's middlewares, you might have IBM's middlewares, you might have every other organization's application-centric OEM middlewares, like I call it. You might still need an overarching integration platform as a service to be able to create that service mesh that is very much needed for that connected ecosystem. And that's going to happen only when you're going to make your business composable. Let's understand how all this is connected with our integration strategy. We want to make business composable, which requires a composition platform where you can deploy your composable business processes, you can deploy your microservices, and so on and so forth. And why is it? Because you need a connected ecosystem. And why, again, do you need a connected ecosystem? That's because you need a proper connection with not just the society, but with other organizations. I keep repeating that. It's not about internal connections only. It's also about external connections. And we're just going to come to that what are those important elements that are required to make sure that you have the right connected ecosystem internally and externally. That's all our integration strategy all about, to be honest. So let's see what our goals are, integration goals. Collaborate. Why do we want to collaborate? Because without collaboration, you will not come to a harmonized business process. You will not come to a harmonized data model. Why do we need harmonized data model? Why do we need an harmonized understanding of how data should look like, how systems should look like? If we have a common medium of understanding or common language for business processes, for data, and so on and so forth, imagine how easy it is for all of us to communicate with an international medium of language across the world. How easy would it be for us to communicate between systems if we had international standards for data? Do we have it? Yeah, we always have it. It always existed in the last 3 decades. We call them EDI standards, electronic data and interchange standards, which are very good. What happened? Why are we not using them? If you're able to collaborate, of course, you'll be able to standardize this. And that's what we were just talking about, harmonization. And if you're able to standardize, that's when you will be able to federate your integrations. And I think all of us should take this conscious step of moving towards this kind of self-certification. And that's the key. When you have self-certification, you accelerate development. And why is accelerated development very important? Well, the business with this kind of digital modernization, with this kind of accelerated digital adoption because of COVID and so on and so forth, the time to market really goes up. You really need to deploy things into market as soon as possible. You want to try, experiment, and fail fast. That means you need to be able to change very quickly without being able to create any kind of domino effect. And you want to limit the blast radius of any kind of changes. How do you do that? Well, that is where it's just not about time to market. It is about change adaptabilities. Moving on, Reckitt's digital IT vision, well, it's quite big. I won't be able to cover it in this session, but it does talk about the need to be efficient, the need to be secure, the need to have an integration strategy that caters to this, and hence the 4 elements of integration strategy. That's typically collaboration, standardization, self-certification, and acceleration. Now let's see what our roadmap is. The same timeline, the same strategy, the same roadmap, but let's understand what happened with Reckitt. The past few decades, or probably an entire few years and probably the entire decade, we were an inorganically growing organization and hence inorganically grown integration. We ended up organically growing our technical debt, and it's nobody's fault, to be honest. We are buying organizations. We had the need to be faster, deploy faster. We didn't have tools, modern age tools back then, decades ago in 1990s. Everything was very difficult. So yes, there was a kind of inertia set in how we do integrations and how we deploy it. And hence, it was always speed over perfection for a very rapidly changing environment in consumer business. As we moved into the modern age, we realized that the course correction is just not about adopting an iPass. It's about even low-code integrations, because if you have low-code integrations, your adoption of iPass just goes up. And as you move forward, it's just not about low-code integrations. It is about self-defining and AI ML-based integrations, and hence transitioning from self-service on the left to a completely self-defining integrations to the right. We really need to become a speed with quality, and not just organizations, our ecosystems. And that is when we will benefit together, and that is when this world will be sustainable. So please remember this. Speed along with quality, not speed over quality. How do you achieve it? That's what each of us have to think when we think about strategies using MuleSoft. So let's talk about the principles of integration. Now, for me, these are the 4 primary principles. One is, whatever you do, keep it reusable. Because the more you're going to think about reusability, the more you're going to think about harmonized business process, the more you're going to think about harmonized data models. If you do not think about reusability from that perspective, then trust me, that's not reusable. Whenever you're building an API, or whenever you're building an integration object, think about how can I reuse this API and not just copy the code and use it in another particular API, but how can I use it as is somewhere else? And that requires core and foundational architecture to be right. And that's what is reusability all about. Once we're done with reusability, what else do we need? We need developers to be able to just walk in, and keep using it. And that's what is all federation all about, federated model in integrations and even democratizing integrations as such. Every time you think about reusability with those core foundation elements correctly, not just about data model, but thinking about federated model as such, I'm sure you'll get your reusability right. Having moved from reusability to federated model, you want federation, you want democratization, it needs to be secured. Integrations can easily get insecure because you might have not designed something properly. You might have missed on some hard codings. Your user ID and passwords are exposed. Privacy data is exposed. And when you're using an integration platform as a service, please understand this. The machine is intelligent as long as the human is intelligent that's using it. The moment you have integrations federated, do not do it without considering the core elements. That means build your core integration objects, build your core APIs. When you build your core APIs and foundational APIs, that's when you can think about external connections. You cannot think about external connections without having your foundations right. Yes, I'm not saying you cannot do it, but what's the shelf life of that integration? What is the change adaptability of that integration? When you want to build integration, think about using accelerators. We'll talk about in the next slide about the time analysis. Now, what is time? Time is typically an analysis done for any kind of application portfolio management where T is for tolerate, I is for invest, M is for migrate, and E is for eliminate. Tolerate anything in your organization that is serving any kind of strategical business process or strategical integrations for that matter. Tolerate all those things. Don't be in a rush to replace them. Not yet. Think about the ripple effect that you get when you try to do something like that. Eliminate anything that doesn't have a business value, and you are just you might be tolerating it just because, all right, it's working, let it work. Let's not do something about it. Well, if it has a low value, just eliminate it. Be bold, be brave to eliminate which has low value and try to migrate it into something which is modern or into a tolerate thing. Invest into modern age technologies, but let's talk about it just from this perspective. If you can buy something and adopt it into your organization, why do you need to engineer it? If you have to build something, yes, you can use MuleSoft for all kinds of integrations. You can use SAP CPI for all kinds of integrations. Please do not try to hunt for a silver bullet. It's never going to work. Connected ecosystems cannot be built, whether internally or externally, cannot be built on a single silver bullet. What is your driver to value realization? That should be your driver. Now let's talk about funding. Nothing works without funding. And it's very important that we think about how funding needs to take place for this kind of digital transformation that I've shown over here. There is an internal set of funding that's meant for core platforms. There is a public integrations which are external to the organization. And then finally, the private integrations that are business process specific, vertical specific. That's where maximum funding is. Reckitt is not Amazon or any other CPG company is not basically like an Amazon as such. We manufacture goods, sell it to the distributors, and distributors sell it to consumers and consumers. So we literally are not, we are consumer-centric business, but we are not selling directly to the consumers. Of course, that model is changing thanks to COVID. Our focus should be in this particular industry, something on the right. We need to get our core foundational elements right. And then we need to target our external integrations. Are we not doing that? Yes, we are. But the funding is coming from the private funding, where you are building integrations. You're building part of your core integrations as part of your private funding. And that is what is the most common model used across. Is it the winning model? Well, not necessarily. The reason being, your priorities are different. When you are trying to build private integrations, your priority is on the business value, which is good to have, but not at the cost of core foundational elements. When you are in this right-hand side kind of a funding model, you need to think about making sure that your core platforms have the right architecture. So when you talk about integration platform as a service, your platform architecture becomes important. And that is where you need your internal funding. So think about distributing your funding in these three areas and then attacking the problem and getting the right priorities in. That's very important as such. Creating reusable APIs is good. And as I told you, what are the KPIs that majorly all organizations capture? And that's this: cost. How much cost do you save by doing things right? Well, there's the answer. This is what Reckitt has done. Any kind of reusable APIs. We did create a reusable API story in 2019 that brought approximately, you can see that it's 47.87. Let me round that up to 50%. 50% capex benefits. On the right hand side, you see average efforts. Of course, it's going to be on the same kind of a situation. That's going to be 50%. Let's understand what good looks like. And to be honest, this is what good looks like for Reckitt or any other organization. We built a reusable API using MuleSoft, and this was the result. Now, was it the result just because we built an API? No. It's just about building the API correctly, evangelizing it correctly, getting the right sponsorship to adopt that API in other projects. That is where the hard work is. Writing a code is easy. Architecting it correctly, that's the tough part from technical aspects. And then going over telling people, please use this when you are trying to build any kind of integrations for this particular business process. Now that is the hard work. Make sure you have this evangelization strategy in place, without which you will not be able to be successful. Success stories are not just about creating APIs, but also having the right evangelization strategy for those APIs on connected ecosystems, on how Reckitt's strategy is, and so on and so forth. And why is this important? I know what we're doing today in Reckitt. I know what the world is thinking of doing today, but are we thinking about the future? Our future is all about making sure we adopt certain major transformation programs, making sure that our integrations are right, and that includes all of us in the world. How do we make sure that we are ready for 3 or 4 years or 5 years of changes from today, and we don't have, what we are building today doesn't become a technical debt tomorrow? How do we do that? That requires a thought process. There are certain elements that you need to get right to make sure that your integration has a proper change adaptability and thus giving the required time to market for an organization. One is the data standards. Get your data standards right. The second one, think about MuleSoft, think about SAP, think about other things, but intelligently distribute your integration. The third and final one, collaborate. Think about the world. Go out in the world. Figure out what other organizations are doing. Try to influence what is the right way to do things in the industry. For a product, for the industry, make sure that you're connected with the world. Just don't build your integrations in silos. Think about the world around you. Think about the products that are getting matured around you. That requires a dedicated mind thinking on these lines. And that's where we need to take a step back, create a kind of a set of people to think on those things. Now with that, I know I probably might tell you a lot many other things, but these are the 3 most important things that you need to think of and not just go and build an API. With that, I think I'm concluding and over to you for any kind of Q&A.